Hey everyone! So you are here today live on Colorisma. I'm Shar, and I'm here joined today by Aaron Radney. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing just fine, actually. Hey, everybody.
So today we're basically just going to chat about Aaron and kind of how he got his start at art and kind of the project that you're working on now.
All right, I'm
It's
excited. I've never had the chance to do anything like this before. As far as the live side of this, I've had a couple of recent interviews or podcast type things, but this is going to be fun. I'm excited. So
mm-hmm,
thank you so
good.
much for inviting me. I was really flattered when I got the email going like, "Hey, you want to be on this madness that I do?"
Good, good. I'm glad. No, I the whole point of the show is as far as I'm still working on like the tagline, but I'm kind of close to one now. I'm kind of going with where passion meets profession, and that's
I like
I
it.
through the time I've seen your art and your work, you're super passionate about what you do and super like into the whole process of like building and all that. So that's definitely one thing I want to chat with you today
I'm
about for
excited.
sure.
Let's do it. And as you're right, I will talk people's ears off about this if they let me. So sounds like a plan.
And we're going to let you today. We're going to let you today.
Yes.
So don't even worry about it. So what kind of led you on the path to being an artist in the first place?
Okay, so this is actually one of my favorite stories to tell. I was one of those kids who always drew, but I also don't have that necessary background story of they never paid attention in class or they weren't a good student because those two always seem to connect in the stories you hear. But no, I was a pretty solid student. There were a whole bunch of paths. A whole bunch of people actually tried to talk me out of art. There were a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
people that tried to talk me into medicine, a bunch of people that tried to talk me into law because they saw how good my grades and everything were. And I experimented with some of those and realized, oh no, this is bad. I this plays into a whole bunch of my more negative traits that I don't want to feed. But
Right?
more to the point though. When I was in my junior or senior year of high school, probably was closer to senior, I read a book. The book was called Galatea in 2D. Now, I was not quite the mythology buff I am now at that time, so I did not catch the reference. Uh, Fortunately, there are a number of things in the book that are nowhere near as creepy as the actual myth of Galatea is. For
Mm-hmm.
anyone who doesn't know the myth of Galatea, go ahead and look that up. But basically, um, Aphrodite has this sculptor. This sculptor sculpts this perfect woman out of marble because he's got a real problem with actual women because they can have opinions and things. This is again a Greek myth. Remember that. He's not a good person, and
Mm-hmm.
he sculpts this perfect woman, but she's a statue, so he can't have a relationship with her. So he prays to Aphrodite to bring his waifu to life. I'm stealing that line from Overly Sarcastic Productions. Uh, they do a really good summary of the myth that I really recommend. It's hilarious. But so I don't know if you can hear. That's my cat, my girlfriend's cat in the background acting a fool. Uh,
No
but
worries.
but Galatea brings his statue waifu to life, and depending on the version of the myth, bad things ensue. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, it's the actual book is not that creepy, but the premise of it is an illustrator. So we're gonna bring it back. Discovers he has the ability to pull the things in his paintings and drawings into the real world. This is the book that made me realize, oh, all those book covers I've grown up looking at, like the Dragon Riders of Pern and David
Mm-hmm.
Eddings' Belgariad and Malorian
Yeah.
books, those are all paintings. And somebody has to make
Right.
those. So wait, that means
Exactly.
that's a job. That means that's something I could do. And that's kind of how I realized I wanted to be a illustrator. I always thought I wanted to do something art, but for years I would say, comic artist or cartoonist. And then
Mm-hmm.
I saw this stuff and I was like, oh, no, I think this is where I want to end up. And it's even funnier in some ways because as I was starting to get on that path, I was in my senior year of arts of high school, and I was trying to do illustrative stuff in my art class. My art teacher gave me the best backhanded compliment I think I've ever gotten, which was, Aaron, you are probably a better illustrator than I'll ever be, but I am not teaching you illustration. I just kind of ignored the second part.
Right.
And that's the road we've been on ever since.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Oh, and that's the road we've been on ever since.
Oh, okay, awesome. I'm having a little connection issues on my end, but I think it's playing fine on the stream. Is people watching on the stream, if you have any questions for Aaron, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And then later on, too, after the live stream, if you have a question, feel free to leave a comment. So as far as that sounds like a pretty meaningful moment right there, but do you have any other kind of like either singular meaningful moment in art in your career, or kind of something that really cemented like this is that? It kind of sounds like you just described that. So if you don't have an extra thing,
I actually do.
We could switch the.
I actually do, and but I'll make this one quick. Around the time I was out of school and I was really starting to try to get my feet under me, I was having a really hard time getting attention in work, and I didn't really understand why, aside from my skill level was still building. But I was also finding I was not enjoying my portfolio. I did not like what I was doing. I didn't like what was in there. And I met a guy online through a fantasy and science fiction group that I was a part of called the State of Black Science Fiction. I've talked about this guy before. His name was Milton Davis. He is the founder of the publishing company MV Media. If you watch or listen to my interview with Tales from the Fandom, I talk about him there a lot. And he gave me my first paid illustration job, which was for an anthology he was doing of a genre I'd never heard before. It was called Sword and Soul, which is African-inspired fantasy. And something clicked, and I was like, oh, okay, this is why the stuff I'm doing is not really grabbing other people or me, because I'm doing, a lot of the classic fantasy stuff, but I'm not really doing it in a way that a lot of better artists haven't done better. And I was like, there's got to be another thing I can do here. And that's what that job turned out to be. And that just changed the entire direction of me doing what I do. That is when we got into doing non-Eurocentric fantasy stuff. That's kind of how my oeuvre got going. So that one piece spiraled into two more pieces that I'm like, these feel kind of connected. And then a story started spiraling out of them. And that's kind of how my new way of thinking about the work I make and the kind of work I wanted to make changed. That one job shifted my entire outlook. And that really started playing into all the stuff I've done since. So like without that one job, I'm a very different illustrator than I would be otherwise.
Oh, that's really awesome. And is there anything that you find kind of the most exciting about creating these worlds and the process of world building in itself?
I have a real affinity for trying to delve into the cultures of the places that I build. When I was in college, I took anthropology of art and cultural anthropology back to back, literally the same day. I would have one class, and then I would just stay in the room because the next class with the same teacher was right afterwards. And so I would be using the stuff I would learn in cultural anthropology to inform what was also going on in the anthropology of art class right afterwards. So I got lots of chance to practice what I was learning in both classes back to back. And that really kind of influenced the way I started trying to think about these fantasy cultures I was building, because I just wanted to try to treat them like real actual real world cultures, things that are going to have their own
Right.
nuances and values and things that should be treated with respect. These are not just set dressing for, a game or something. These are the things that are going to inform the decisions I make with regards to everything: costuming, food, dress, um, religion, the kinds of technology that they want to use.
Right.
All those questions. And so much of it is tied to geography, so that I have to kind of have an idea about all that stuff. It's an excuse to continue having fun with that kind of research and reading and constantly getting to learn about these things. And it helps me make these places feel more grounded, while
Right.
also, I don't just want to replicate the same fantasy tropes over and over again with a different skin. I want these things to feel lived in and at least somewhat understood. One of the things that you learn in anthropology of any kind is you're never going to understand another culture as well as you know the one into which you were born, or into which you were raised. It's important to come into those spaces as a guest, as someone who is eager to understand, but has to recognize that what you learn has to be on the terms of the people from whom you are learning.
Right.
And I try to do that even with these fantasy cultures as much as I can, especially when I'm borrowing ideas or things from real life, because there are things that I'm simply not going to understand because these are not cultures that I am from. So I try to be as careful and respectful with some things as I can be, and try to get that balance of representation that comes from a place of, the way I always say it is, if you're going to be representing a culture that's not your own, you want whatever you're doing to be a love letter to that culture, not just trying to take what you can from it. So you want to find things you can love about whatever it is you're studying or that you're engaging with.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that with my own comic as well. As far as kind of the world you're building, do you want to get into? Well, first off, where can people find said world?
So this is actually something that I am going back and forth on right now. The world building that I do is primarily through my Patreon. It's very easy to find me on Patreon. It is simply patreon.com/Aaron Radney. That should all be one word. And mostly I do my world building through art and stories on there. I have been looking into doing a broader repository of the stuff that is public. I've seen a few different people do this a couple of different ways. There's another artist that I follow. Her name is Sam Hogg. She has she just launched an incredible website with all the stuff for her world building that gave me just too many ideas about stuff I might want to do with my own.
Oh, it's so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, there's World Anvil. There's also this thing I heard of called Campfire, which might be useful. I'm investigating some other ways of sharing what is not Patreon specific in those, and then figuring out how to give patrons that extra stuff they've gotten used to. Right now, most of what's there is short fiction and lore stuff on Patreon for my worlds. And yes, that is worlds. The Patreon is built around 5 different fantasy worlds that I kind of have jostling around in my head. And each year we explore a different one. So last year we explored my first world, which was called Hanan. That is my Pan-African inspired fantasy world. This year we are exploring Zastos, which is a very different setting from that. It has a lot of Mongolian inspiration,
Yeah.
because that one started off as a different kind of project entirely, that I needed a kind
Mm-hmm.
of a background for a game idea that I had, and it spiraled out into this. So Zastos is this kind of setting where, due to the machinations of an ancient empress, the people
Mm-hmm.
can't the warlords can't wage war anymore. So Zastos is kind of set in this Cold War stalemate type situation where they battle through proxies and spies and sabotage and theft. It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
darker of a world than Hanan, but I realize as I'm saying it out loud, I have this real thing where, like, one of the important things is magical ways to prevent people from doing stupid wars.
Right.
I did not realize that was a thing so much in two of my settings, but that is in fact the case. So yeah, there's that one. There's Rannor, which is kind of an older world that I came up with when I was a teenager that I've been slowly tinkering with. There is
Mm-hmm.
Esmeralda, which is a fantasy kitchen sink world that I came up with for, again, an entirely different project back when I was in college, uh, which I might get a
Mm-hmm.
chance to talk more about at some point, depending on how much time we have today. And then there is Chaquette, which is Chaquette and Rannor actually started off as settings for book ideas that I don't know if I'll ever get around to writing, because I just don't know if I'm confident in my ability to actually write a full-on novel or anything. But Chaquette is a Egyptian inspired fantasy world, hence
Mm.
the title for that
Right.
one. So yeah, those are the five: Zastos, Chaquette, Esmeralda, Rannor, and Hanan. And if anybody really wants,
Mm-hmm.
again, that can be the write ups for those can be found on there. And if we've got time, I might put on my DM hat and give a brief, more actually written summary of all of those. But I don't know exactly how much time we're going to have on this today, so we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested in hearing kind of about all of them. As far as you said, they're all different worlds. Are they interconnected at all within like a
Not as far,
broader
not as far,
universe?
not as far as I know. Like, there has not been any indication of anything like planeswalking from Magic the Gathering or world hoppers from like the Cosmere series from Brandon Sanderson. These are all
Mm-hmm.
separate because they all do different
Okay.
things for me, and they were all started as different things. So I don't see a
Mm-hmm.
reason to connect them at this point. But never say
Right.
never, right? You never. I never know how things are
Yeah.
gonna happen, and on some level, these worlds have a little bit of a mind of their own. There'll be times when I'll just be hanging out and something will pop into my head for one of the worlds, and I'll go, "Wait, that's there? Okay, I guess." if if
Yeah.
if I don't kind of pull myself into the fiction that these are real places, kind of with their own setups and their own things going on, it kind of breaks the fun for me. So I keep doing that a little bit. Like, I will treat and talk about these as if these are real places developing independently of me, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's got to be fun. It's got to stay fun for you, or else otherwise, kind of,
What's the point?
how can
Yeah,
you keep creating? Yeah.
exactly.
You
It's it.
do you
I
want
like
to delve into one of these worlds specifically?
sure. We're doing Zastos this year on my Patreon. And so, you know what? As much as I love Hanan, which is probably my favorite of the worlds, and if after we get all these explored at least a little bit and I know a little bit about them and I decide I want to focus on one long term, it's probably going to be Hanan. But let's talk about Zastos, since that's what we're working on this year. I will go ahead and I will read off my little blurb that I came up with for Zastos, which I use as a reminder in case I'm ever getting too far off track to come back on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Zastos is a world trapped in a perpetual state of Cold War. after a powerful warlord unified her people, ending nearly 3 centuries of raids, feuds, and civil war. Her allies, who she'd enlisted in her cause by promising them the magical secret she herself was using to complete her conquest, they became resentful. She always seemed just a little more powerful than they were, just a little further ahead. Suspicious, they plotted to force this empress to reveal what she was hiding. No one, aside from those that were there, know exactly what happened next. But in the end, the empress lay dead. Only afterwards did they discover that she had been holding a secret. And that secret left the former warlords nearly immortal, but too powerful to fight directly without destroying everything. Now in a position of mutually assured destruction, they've been reduced to a state of proxy war against one another, using mercenary armies. And while their mercenaries work in the shadows, the rich also send adventuring companies off in search of magical relics or hints of what the queen hid from them. Anything to discover the final secret, a secret known as the Dun Rai.
That's awesome.
Thank you. That setting, again, grew out of 2 things. One, I was watching some videos at the time, because this came up as an idea as the backstory, the lore for a card game idea over a decade ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And eventually I couldn't make the card game idea work because I'm not a game designer.
Yeah. It's more difficult than it seems.
Oh, it's so much harder than it seems. I have nothing but respect for the folks out there who are doing game design and just like, let me paint the pretty pictures. I'm not going to try that. But
exactly.
right. So I was watching a lot of stuff about the Cold War at the same time, as well as later on getting some information about Genghis Khan. I was really interested in Genghis Khan and the in Mongolia and all that, and the interestingly enough, also some elements of the Warring States period in Japan, because there was that same kind of stalemate going on, where one group couldn't march on Kyoto without having the people that they were keeping in balance because they were in whatever position they were coming in to take their lands. And so I was like, okay, there's a little bit of similarity in terms of the instability there and what was going on with the Mongolian tribal and clan groups before Genghis Khan's unification. And it's like, so that idea of unification under a single ruler in both of those instances made me go, okay, that might be fodder for some kind of game idea, and then that spiraled off into Zastos later.
Mm-hmm. Is there any, so it sounds like you have a lot of influences from actual history too. So is that kind of the main source, or is that just something that you're kind of using as a reference?
It depends. It really does depend on the particular world or anything going on. Esmeralda started off as a school project because there was a book that we were expected to read. And that, the book was called Invisible Cities, and we had to do a project of illustrating one of the cities in the book. And I picked a city named Esmeralda, which had all this descriptions of canals and walkways and bridges. It sounded like a really fantasy Venice in a lot of ways. And I thought that was really cool. And so that world is much more inspired by an aesthetic. And the fact that I have failed miserably 3 times trying to depict it. I am hoping one day I'll be able to get that one right. Hasn't happened yet, but we're trying.
Yeah. So are you kind of focused more on the general world, or kind of specifically into a particular character's exploration in that world?
Again, that depends on the world. But most of the time I do tend to do very like broad overview type deals. I like putting in the broad strokes. I really like some world builders, and I know some DMs in Dungeons and Dragons or any kind of tabletop games, if they're doing world building, they'll start with like a single city, and then they'll build
Right.
out to, or like a small village, and they'll build out to the surrounding area. Then they'll build out to the kingdom proper, and then they'll build
Mm-hmm.
out to the nation and all that stuff.
Right.
I'm apparently a glutton for punishment and like making extra work for myself, and instead like to build from the big to the small as opposed to the small to the big. Like
That's cool, though.
I'll start by figuring out the creation myth of a location and then figure out if how accurate or inaccurate the creation myth is, and then drill down to the city. Though Esmeralda did actually begin more as a starting from the city and then building the world out. So again, it does depend. I like to build my world because the characters tend to be shaped by the world. I found that when I personally try to build from character out, the world starts feeling like it is built around the character rather than the character fitting into the world that already existed.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So we got a couple questions here, if you don't mind answering them.
Oh my gosh, we have questions.
We do.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. All right.
Looks like, yeah, you have a fan here. Sean says that they're a huge fan, that they love your aesthetic, your positivity, and your politics. Do you do design work for TV?
The opportunity has not arisen yet. Nobody has really asked me to do anything in that vein. I don't think I'd be opposed. I don't think I'd be opposed to it at all. It's one of those things where, depends on who's asking, what the project is, and if I think I can best execute on what is being asked for. But yeah, that is not something I've had the opportunity to do yet. But it is one of those things that, yeah, I don't think that if the circumstances were right, I don't think I would turn that down. Why, Sean? Are you offering?
I mean, they go on to say that they're a writer and a creator, always looking for great artists to collaborate with. So that's awesome. One more question from them as well. So do you run any D&D games? Which I think you have some interesting answers for that, huh?
I do run a D&D game. I'm a first-time DM. I'm very new to this whole thing. My group, we are literally 9 sessions in. So I have done, I think, maybe 10 sessions of D&D in my life. Because there was one other attempt that somebody asked me to DM for, and we weren't able to really get it going. Circumstances and technology got us in the way. This was before everything that's been going on lately. But the group has been a lot of fun. The campaign is not at all like a lot of things that I've seen other people do. My group let me know from the beginning they weren't super big on doing combat. So I've adjusted the story and things. I've given them opportunities to talk their way out of problems, and there are times they have really shocked and surprised me. They RP wonderfully. They are in the middle of a arc that I am loving, messing with them a little bit because their last enemy was a shapeshifter. They are hyper paranoid right now. And I love it. I love it. They are seeing enemies around every corner. They are only level 4, and they are already incredibly terrified, and I love it.
It sounds like you're a good DM then, if that's the case.
If they're having fun, that means that I'm the DM they need. So like that's the way I prefer to think about it. DMs are a little bit like predators in an ecosystem. They should be designed or they're adapted to their environment, I should say. What I'm doing may not work for a different group. If I'm playing with a bunch of people who they're more war gamers, I would have to adapt my approach. but this is an
Right.
RP heavy group. Like they all dropped into character and voices almost immediately. They
Nice.
love interacting with the NPCs. They get a little. There are times they almost get a little hurt when it seems like an NPC is a throwaway. Like they just want they want to interact with the world, and they really do enjoy that feeling that the world is moving independently of them.
Right.
So that's been a lot of fun. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. Yes, I have one game. It's the only one I intend on doing right now. I'm having a lot of fun, but I'm very inexperienced.
Right. It sounds like you gather a lot of experience, and the fact that you're kind of keeping notes with how you're approaching the world, how you're approaching these players, that you can kind of take that into another game as well, even with the same people or different people.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope, is that this will not be the last game. This will hopefully not be the last game I DM.
Right.
So
interesting. Something that caught me with what you just said is that they are interested in a world that is running independent of them, as opposed to, I guess, a group that's more like they want the world to revolve around them. So I feel like that's got to play into your world building passion quite a bit, right?
a little bit, yeah. Like they like the idea that some of the NPCs and people they're dealing with have lives and motivations and interests outside of them. I mean, literally, the first NPC quest giver that they met in our game was a politician who was basically using them for her own political moves, because she had a rival who she felt was a threat to the realm, and she was using them to try to draw him out, to try to get him to make a move.
Right.
Because she felt he was acting through a proxy, a local leader, to try to inflame tensions between the empire where this setting is going on and an outside group that they have been at war with for years. She felt he was this guy, the tribal leader, who was causing problems for them, was not acting on his own. And suspected her rival. So she was trying to get the group to stop his plan and help get her the information she needed to prove that, so she could start making the next move she wanted to make. And it wasn't anything special about them, because they were level 1 adventurers. She just specifically needed bodies, and these were the people who she was able to call in favors to get. So they weren't special. These were just They had a background that she felt was useful for the job, and she pulled the string she needed to get them.
Right.
But
at the right place at the wrong time, maybe.
kind of like that, yeah. But yeah, like she had her own agenda. She wasn't just there to be a quest giver. There are things going on in this world that they have not interacted with yet, and she was operating for her own ambitions and her own reasons.
And just real quick, in the chat, they were asking, will this be posted later? And yes, this is live right now, but as soon as it's over YouTube, it'll be saved on there. So you can come back to the same link and watch it whenever you get a chance. So we appreciate you having you here and hanging out. As far as people in the chat, anytime you can come out and ask some questions, we always appreciate it. As far as any other influences, I think I met you through Twitter over a particular influence. If you know where I'm getting at.
You had to steer it to Animorphs, didn't you? You just had to get it there. No, yeah,
there's a movie
not going to be
out. I got to somewhere about it.
not upset in the least. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Right.
But yeah, we met over an Animorphs conversation.
Right, exactly. Which I was like, oh, it's there's enough Animorphs people around that like you'll say it and someone will raise their hand, but it's like only one or two people, or I saw book covers, they were weird, or
It's
and yes,
actually funny.
they were super
They were
weird.
very weird, but it's actually funny because I found you before that conversation. You had a
Oh, okay.
YouTube video going through your
Mm-hmm.
art, and a lot of it was old Animorph stuff.
Oh yes,
And I
yes. I
commented on
meant
that
to.
video.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
I com-
I meant to do more with that, and I never got around to it. As it
life is
goes.
what happens when we're making other plans, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah,
As
like
far as that series goes, oh, sorry, I keep interrupting you
no, no,
there.
no, no, no. We just got that little bit of a delay. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, no worries. I guess kind of what I'm curious on is where did you start with your Animorphs journey? I'm like OG 1996, so that's where mine started.
It's hard to remember exactly. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was in elementary school, so it had to be a close in time. I want to say it was sometime. It was pretty much sometime between 96 and 98.
Okay, it was
Uh,
still going pretty good there
yeah,
because
I
it was
remember.
until 2001. So
Right. So I remember. So I remember finding the first book. I think I want to say it was at a Scholastic book fair. I really want to say that's where it was. It
that's
might be
fair.
wrong, but I want to say that's where it was. And I remember reading the first book, the classic Jake morphing into the lizard cover,
Yep,
and I
super digital
devoured
looking.
super digital looking, bad PS4 graphics. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, PS4 wasn't even a thing yet. Oh gosh, I feel old.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, PS1 I think was though.
PS1 is being like these were a little bit better than PS1, but not by
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
But
not by a
but
lot.
but yeah, but I remember reading that book. Like I remember devouring that and kind of thinking, well, gonna have to read all of these now. And I stuck with that. Like I think at one point in my room I had most of the books. Like I think I was only missing between 10 and 12 of the 54 books
Oh
in
wow.
like the main series. That's not even counting all the
Right.
chronicles and all the side
Oh
addendum
no.
stuff.
Yeah.
Good lord,
Yeah.
Applegate wrote a lot.
Well, she
Like
had help.
she
There
had
was
help. I mean,
help,
yeah, it was
but
the Ghost Rider. I mean, there were the Ghost Riders and everything. Scholastic
yeah.
put that woman on a ludicrous schedule.
Oh, it was. I mean, it was literally a book a month. A
Yeah.
full, which doesn't sound like a lot, and my parents got mad at me for reading too fast, so
Mhm.
they got
Like
annoyed that I kept bothering them for a month, and then like in 1 hour I was done, and then I'm just bothering them again as soon as I finish that book. But
those books were quick reads,
they're
but
very fast.
they were
But
very fast. They were very fast reads. But no, a book a month is a ludicrous schedule. Follow some authors on Twitter. If any of you don't believe that, follow some authors on Twitter and just understand the Animorphs books were for that time, they were full length YA novels. Now, admittedly, they were only
right,
150 to 200 pages at most. Not the
right,
400, not the 300 to 400 page tomes we have since the Harry Potter got popular.
right.
But that was not a.
150 pages a month.
That's a lot. Like, follow some authors on
That's a
Twitter
lot.
and have them and listen to how they talk about like what they do each month. That's a lot.
Right, right. And then on top of it, if you were to try to take what was in each book and convert it to a media, I mean, I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but I'm fairly certain that they're going to take the first book and make it into probably an hour and a half movie. So there's enough content there to
Mm-hmm.
flesh out an hour and a half movie. So that's not
Oh yeah,
like a 10-minute like adventure time episode. This is like a lot of content within one
oh yeah.
150 page story.
And
So
remember, there were 54 of these main series ones of these.
yes, yes,
But yeah,
from 96 to 2000.
I loved those books. I loved those things. They don't I don't feel like they have as much of a influence on the way I tell my stories as some of the other things that I've read do. But I absolutely
Right.
adored those books, and I adored uh, the way they handled the really just awful situation that those characters were in.
I've listened to some podcasts about the series, and the overarching theme is kind of those poor children, those poor
Yep.
babies, like which at the time I was the same age as them. So I never
Mm-hmm.
kind of got that. I was like, what would I do in this situation? Like it was very, as you're reading it as the age of the characters, it just felt very immersive. Like you were there with them, joining them on the journeys.
I definitely had some of that, but I also was a weird kid, and so I remember thinking, "Oh man, these guys' lives suck." Like just so for anyone who does not know about these books,
Right.
Animorphs was the story of a group of middle school kids. This actually starts with them in middle school. It's hard to remember that at first, but
Yeah.
they're like
Right.
sixth, seventh, eighth
12,
grade,
13.
maybe 12, 13, coming back from the
Yeah.
mall when an alien spaceship crash lands in a construction site on their way home. The alien lets them know that their planet is being invaded by brain-stealing slugs from outer space,
Mm-hmm.
and gives them the power to transform into any animal they can touch to become guerrilla warfare child soldiers in a fight against impossible odds until his
Yes.
aliens
Just
until
5
his alien
kids.
yeah, 5 kids, until his alien species can finally get things under control enough to come help deal with this backwater planet that is
Yeah.
really only on the evil alien slug's radar because there are a lot of us, and they are a parasite species that needs bodies to do anything.
Right.
So we are reading a book series about child soldiers who end up having to deal with the atrocities of fighting a guerrilla war against a seemingly endless force that can be anybody, because these slugs can slither into your ear canal, take over your brain,
Mm-hmm.
and seem just like anybody. The main character finds out
Yep.
his brother has already been taken over by one of them and then has to live in the same house with the enemy for the entire run of the series.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, oh, the level of paranoia these kids have to deal with is just not like, that's the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Then you get into the body horror, the absolute complete and utter terror that some of the animal
Mm-hmm.
transformations are involved with. Uh,
See, I just
if
thought
you
that was
read,
cool as a kid.
oh yeah,
That was me.
mm-hmm. the oh yeah, don't get me wrong, I had my morphs, but I was just
Oh,
like,
of
oh my
course. What's your battle
gosh,
morph?
these
What's your battle morph?
Battle morph. Uh, I never had just one. My thinking was you would definitely want the right tool for the job, but my immediate go-to on that for years was always Jaguar. And
There you
then in
go.
one of the books,
Perfect.
they actually do get temporary Jaguar morphs. So I was like, yes, vindication.
Right. Got it.
But yeah, that
It's a
seemed to
good
be a
one.
niche. That was a niche they didn't have at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'd actually probably go with Hippo.
I mean, they get more people a year than Crocs and pretty much any
Exactly.
other big predator on on the
Yeah.
continent. So yeah.
Nowadays I would either go with Hippo or Komodo dragon. And again, funny,
Mm-hmm.
there was a choose your own adventure where that was one of the morphs that you could get as a battle
Yes.
morph in that. I am
Yeah, I
shocked I
do
remember
remember
so
that
much of
one.
this. I am shocked I remember so much
It's
of
weird
this.
once it starts coming back. You're just like
Hmm.
you just get sucked into all of it because
Oh yeah.
there's so much
So
to remember.
there was so much, and but yeah, the kids deal with some serious stuff. Like there was a book, there was one of the ones that I missed, like one of the ones that I was never able to find and buy. But one of the things that's referenced in it kind of made me have to sit for a second because I was like, that sounds like a war crime. Did our main characters commit a war crime here?
Yeah, yeah, and they casually lose limbs, and I was like, as an artist as a kid reading the series, I was like, if I drew this out, this would not be a story for fifth graders, or
No.
which was it was a fifth grade reading level book. And at the
Yep.
time I was in sixth grade reading it, but I was like, if I drew this out, I could not even show my classmates.
Oh yeah. If
I mean,
you
I
go
would,
and
but
read, if you go and read those books, and then you look at the ages they were recommended for at the time, like this would not pass muster today. It was a
no,
different time back in the 90s.
it was a little. It wasn't. It was. It's like some things were more harsh, but in different mediums. So the
Oh yeah.
TV was like, if you saw the TV show,
Oh yeah.
it was very blah and benign.
We don't.
But
The Animorphs TV show goes in the same bin as the Avatar movie. They don't exist. We don't talk about those.
Exactly. So I guess to kind of round out the discussion with kind of your art and your path on that journey, what kind of difficulties have you faced in the path of what you're doing so far?
It really depends again on how you define difficulties. I think one of the big things that I've actually struggled with and that I've been trying to get better about is just putting myself out there. One of the things that gets talked about in the art community a lot is there's always a disconnect between your level of your taste and your skill. Your skill is always going to lag a little bit behind your taste, and we get into this because we know what looks good. And we'll have those moments where your skill level improves and you're like, oh yeah, this is really good. But your taste hasn't quite caught up. And then your taste will shoot past it a little bit. And then they go, wait, why did I ever think this was good? I am, I am aware of what my skill level is. And I look at what is getting published out there, and there are just so many people who are so incredible. And it's hard sometimes to look at your stuff and look at other people who are getting work in the business and going, okay, my stuff's not quite there yet. It's probably worth it to keep training a little bit longer before throwing stuff out there, because I'm going to compete against this person for this kind of work. I need to be able to, do that to have a chance. But it's one of those things where if you keep thinking in that realm, you're never going to put yourself out. You're never going to get your stuff out there in front of people who might go, oh no, this is what I need for this job.
Right.
You might. Fortune loves the bold, and there are so many people. Like there was a. This is actually something that I'm gonna do another name drop. There's a art director named Lauren. Let me make sure I get her name right, because I can never. I want to make sure I pronounce her last name right. Panapinto, Lauren Panapinto. She did a whole thing for Visible Women about how a lot of the women she talked to, they should have been submitting stuff to her and art directors for years. And she tried to explain to them, the number of male artists who were nowhere near publication ready. No names were named. Let's get that out of the way just at the beginning. She wasn't trying to be insulting to anybody here. But the point of it was there were all these people who were not quite publication ready, who they were sending her their stuff at the bare minimum, at least, so that they could be on her radar as they leveled up. But a lot of these women were already good enough, but didn't think they were. And so it's one of those things where, it is easy sometimes to trick yourself into thinking that you're not ready for something when you are. So I had to get over that part of my fear. That was one of the bigger difficulties. The other thing was accepting that what I do is not going to be for everybody. I like painting black and brown people. I'm not going to beat around the bush on that.
No.
That's what got me.
I think it's awesome, and we need more of it.
Definitely, and that's why I keep doing it. But there are going to be people who that's going to tick them off, and I welcome their anger. It feeds the algorithm.
Right.
But recognizing that that was something I was going to have to accept. Fortunately, I've been really
Mm-hmm.
lucky. No one has decided to get too ridiculous with me about that yet. A part of that is that
Yeah.
I'm still relatively unknown, so haven't had too many trolls knocking on, trying to come up from under my bridge.
Right. Yeah. There's
But
something to be not knowing, not being so well known that you're going to get all that kind
yes,
of junk too.
exactly.
It's like you get to revel in just the joy of it for a little longer.
Yeah, like all the people that the people I've interacted with have all been really supportive people. They've all been excited to see that there are other people and there are artists out there that are matching what they want to do, that are giving them the images and stories they wish they had when they were kids. That is changing now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the other hard thing, was me going, okay, this is what I need to do. Yes, it's a little scary because I'm going to have to blaze my own trails on a whole bunch of this stuff. There is
Yeah.
no, for example, one of the pieces that I did years ago was called The Next Mage Chief. And it was because I
Mm-hmm.
rarely ever saw dark skinned magic users in any kind of fantasy where they weren't also some kind of evil, Eurocentric
Yeah.
type wizard or anything.
Right.
There was no immediate, easily recognizable iconography for non-European black wizard. There
Mm-hmm.
was no, there was no robe and pointy hat basically
Right.
for that. There was no, easy signifiers of, how did this person look? What is their dress like? What kind of things do they carry with them? What signifies this person as a caster?
Mm-hmm.
I had to figure
That
that out.
isn't just copying.
Right.
Yeah.
I had to figure that out. I had to make that up. And while it was definitely a fun challenge, it was a little scary because it's like, okay, I'm playing around with stuff that I don't see a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make this work? And I went and I did a lot of research. I tried finding things. There was only so much that I could find. It wouldn't be until I started putting stuff out there that I actually started finding other people who were on kind of the same general, for lack of a better word, quest. They were on the same general quest.
Mm-hmm.
I'd found a whole bunch of other really cool people who they were engaging in the same kinds of questions. They were looking at the same kind of resources and historical reference and cultural reference, and they were coming at it from different angles. And we were all starting to piece together these things. So, getting a chance to hang out and interact with these people, especially on Twitter, has allowed me to start has allowed all of us to kind of start building that lexicon. We've all been kind of working on our own islands for a long time, and it's been so much fun to actually get to see their stuff and interact with them and kind of go, oh, okay, I like the way like that draping works. I'm gonna see if I can incorporate
Mm-hmm.
that into the next thing that I do, and I hope that some of them are looking at my stuff and going, that's cool. Maybe I can borrow some of that too. So I'm hoping that we get to
Yeah.
feed off each other a little bit more as we develop stuff.
No, that sounds great. I love that. I want to see more. I want to see
Me
all
too.
of it.
That's why I keep making it. Me too.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love hearing that.
Oh yeah, that has been the other thing, and that's kind of ties to the other thing, is just the feeling of being alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the awkward thing. And
Yeah.
feeling like I am not actually alone has been one of the best feelings about this. Getting to meet and talk with other people who, they want to see this change in fantasy and tabletop and all these things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there was a while where I was having a whole bunch of people come to me asking when I was going to open for commissions again. And there was just a bunch of stuff going on where I couldn't, and it hurt me because I
Yeah.
want to work with all these people that were coming to me. I want to work with them. Like, they were all people who I thought were
Right.
doing either really cool stuff, or I was really excited that they thought of me when they wanted a project. And it was really frustrating because there were a number of things going on in my personal world at the time where I was not in a place where I could open.
Right.
Fortunately, we're getting close to the end of that. I'm hoping that there's going to be an opportunity soon where I can make the time.
Yeah.
Because I have a whole bunch of people's names and information noted down to get in touch with them about stuff when the time is right.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds great. And it sounds like a lot of those things were things that helped you to keep going on your path. And
Yes.
especially when that did get difficult, when it did get lonely and you felt like there wasn't a lot of representation, and now finding these communities seems to be really helpful.
Finding your party is
Yes.
yeah, that is a thing. That is definitely a thing.
That's awesome. So we're getting toward the end of the show here,
Yep.
and I definitely want everyone to remember and write down and get all the information that you want to give as far as where can they find you and where can they help support you.
All right, so we're getting into that portion of the show, the cold hard cash plug all your stuff section. I love that. So
Heck
let's go
yeah.
ahead and talk about
Do
that. You can find me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/Aaron Radney. That's all one word. If you want to find me over on Twitter, once again, it's really easy. It's just at Aaron_Radney. I talk about art, world building, the, let's call it, complex nature of trying to deal with being Black in the US right now, and generally stuff about depiction and representation in fantasy, art, and gaming. Those are probably the places that I'm most active to get in touch with me. I enjoy getting to interact with people there. I do, however, have a let's call it aggressive blocking strategy when people act a fool. Because I've got a community to actually, I've got some level of a community to actually protect now, and so I try to make sure that folks don't have to deal with that if I can avoid it. But yeah, those are the two places that it's most effective to get in touch with me if you want to follow what I do. I do have a Facebook, but I don't plug that quite as often because I'm not positive how long I'm going to keep it, if I'm being perfectly honest.
That's fair. I am just keeping it as a presence right now. That's my strategy, as a business presence, and otherwise pretty much non-existent on there.
But yes, Twitter and Patreon are the two best places to get a hold of me, and I would be more than happy to see more folks join me in the minor madness that is that particular part of my world.
That sounds awesome. I always appreciate reading about your perspectives and just your thoughts on all these different topics, well, especially on Twitter, but I'm on your Patreon too, so I like seeing behind the scenes as well.
I'm glad that folks enjoy what gets put out there. I've had some really great feedback from the patrons there, and I'm always looking to improve things on there so folks can feel like they're getting the best bang for their buck in their support.
I definitely feel that way. As a patron myself, I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Char.
Yeah.
That
No
means
problem.
a lot.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. So but yeah, that has been that's the other thing that's been really a big surprise lately, is the explosion of people showing up on Twitter. And I really hope that there's more interaction there because it's important to have that even when the world is not going to hell in a handbasket.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know there was a big kind of thing going on a couple of months ago where there was a lot of promotion of
a lot of
different opportunities, and it was great, but it's like it's a lot right now. Just simmer down on all of that and just like maybe wait a couple months and then do this. But yeah.
Long-term support is
Yes.
more beneficial
Mm-hmm.
than one time flash in the pan feeling like you did something and then vanishing off the face of the earth. A lot of Black creators
Right.
dealt with that during
Yeah.
the uprisings, and
Right.
it didn't. It doesn't do good things when folks just disappear like that.
No.
I feel like
No. It's got to be
I almost
sustainable.
it's got to be sustainable, and that's what we want. We want
Mm-hmm.
sustainable work. We want sustainable work.
Yep.
We want sustainable communities, and we want sustainable representation in the things that we all love, and a chance to make
Yep.
those things the best they can be.
Yes. I want all of that. I want all of that. It's not. It's. We're all. That's what we're all working towards, right? So.
That's what we hope we're all working towards. Yeah, as soon
Yes.
the more effort people put out, the better things are going to be down the line.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate you having you on the show, joining me for this hour. And
Thank you so much for
anytime
inviting me,
you
Char.
want
I had a blast.
yeah, absolutely. And anytime you want to come back, just let me know. I'll definitely enjoy chatting with you again.
I would love that. Thank you so much again, Char. I had a
Not a
blast here.
problem.
This was great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for watching Colorisma out there in the audience. Like I said, if you are in the chat, feel free to leave Aaron a message or leave a comment if you're watching this later. I appreciate y'all and have a good one. Take care. Bye.
Have a good one, everybody.